Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in into the JPI's fundraising live stream. This is a quick reminder for you to click the link in our description box below and donate to our COVID-19 crowdfunding campaign in association with Give India, Uplift, and the Ujala Foundation. Today, we have amongst us the next Jeff Bezos, the next Michelle Obama, the next Alan Turing, and the next John McCarthy. Four of the brightest, most innovative JPIS alumni, all pursuing undergraduate education at different stages of their Princeton journey. Without further ado, we would love to introduce you to the Tigers of Princeton, Aryan Bhasin, Isha Agarwal, Ronit Singhi, and Sarthak Chaturvedi. Akriti, ma'am, would you like to?
Yes, thank you so much, Aryan. A hearty welcome to all our audience who are watching in, who have tuned in to be here and actually get into the secrets, the insider news of the Princeton pack and how they became so, how they adorned the orange clothes and left the school bubble to actually join that at Princeton. Thank you for joining us and thank you for supporting the fundraiser initiative of our students. To begin with, I'm going to ask you, Aryan. So, I've known you always and worked with you for college applications. I remember every time that your laptop came in front of us, there was always a surprise. From the random alarms that would ring to remind you to not procrastinate, to your own website of favorites, favorite tooth, and so much more. So you had your quirky side, but you always had your eye on the goal. What drove you to be so self motivated to make sure that you understand your own weaknesses and convert them into strengths?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's something everyone struggles with. Also, if I'm not audible enough, please let me know if I should repeat myself at any point. Uh, I think I think it's been a major split between like high school motivations and college motivations. I feel like in high school, a lot of it was just dependent on the people I was around. It felt like I wrote this essay. I remember like to for my MIT application or something, which is about how Jaipur, like the pink city, like had all the pink walls and like the walls were like metaphorically constricting me. And I always felt like the people I was around weren't really the people I wanted to be around, and I was limiting my potential just because I was not in the right place and not in the right like time or like around the right set of people. So I think in high school, a lot of my self motivation was just wanting to be not average or not mundane as compared to everyone else in the city. It just felt like the city had a lot of potential in general, like to improve in terms of education and like so many other aspects. That's changed a lot since I've gotten to college. I've realized that was a very like arrogant and like very nihilistic view. Now that I'm surrounded by like people who are like way like more successful than like you can like even imagine. I think I started to realize that um, you can get the smartest group of people in some place and still feel not motivated, and you can be like in like the most mediocre of places and still feel fully motivated to keep working harder. I think now just realizing that you're not really competing with anyone, you're just competing with yourself, and that if you keep in mind that like everyone has some kind of purpose or everyone can ascribe towards doing something or like doing something better than other people, then they should be like striving towards that potential. Very cliched, but yeah, I think like my takeaway has been not to compete with other people but to compete with yourself.
That's very interesting to hear from you, Aryan, because competition was your middle name and in school. And of course, that led to all the straight A's, that led to your impeccable score. Um, coming to an impeccable score, I remember when you took over as head boy in grade 11. You were known as the straight A Aryan. For you, it was mainly about academics, right? And we saw you grow over the 2 years largely to the end of grade 12. You were delivering phenomenal speeches without being nervous, without breaking into a sweat. You were even dancing. You had embraced things that weren't part of your comfort zone earlier. So we saw that growth happen just in 2 years of grade 11th and 12th. So what's the Narayan like today after college? How have you grown after leaving the portals of school?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear like other people's opinions on this also. But what I've personally seen at Princeton is from the moment So after 12th grade, I feel like it was a lot about moving away from academics and more into public speaking and just managing people in general. I feel like the managing people, controlling people, like working in teams has like grown exponentially for me, just like by virtue of leading organizations at Princeton, starting as like a normal like team member and then like escalating to like team lead and then finally like the whole like organization lead from freshman, sophomore, and junior year. A lot of my like mental like change in my mindset has been about realizing that you can only do so much alone by getting the straight A's, and if you work in teams or if you like manage teams of people who get straight A's, you can do much more. So that kind of mindset change has been the biggest thing, I think. And emotional intelligence, I think, has been another big thing, just realizing that when you're thrown into like a place where you're not really like seeing everyone, like all your like best friends every like single day like you would in high school, or you're not really like you can't really go to people's houses, talk to their families, play board games every single day like you could in high school. You have to like start making like better friends in like a different way and start interacting in a different way. So I think that social intelligence has been something new as well. So I feel like those two areas have been like things that I've like rammed up more than academics, at least for me. But I want to hear like other people's perspectives as well.
Absolutely. So, actually, I'm going to ask Isha to add to that and throw some light because you spoke about emotional intelligence. And having worked with Isha, I know that, Isha, if you remember, you spoke a lot about how you realized, thankfully, in the nick of time, that everything that you were doing and all the trophies and everything that you had collected, they were coming at an opportunity cost, right? And you were very quick to act to that. You were very quick to change that. So, can you elaborate on that, speak about it, and also leave some advice here for your juniors who are currently entering the phase where they are participating in so many things, vying for so many positions? What advice would you give them at this juncture?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you for having us here. This is such a wonderful initiative, and I mean, I'm really excited to be a part of it in any way. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was my first common application essay as well. So that was definitely like a massive and a very important journey for me in like my final year of high school. And I hope and I feel that that's something that I've tried to continue working on over the last couple of years. Just to like keep reminding myself of the importance of, I think like Aryan said, things beyond grades, social connections, and valuing the valuing what it can mean to have like brilliant, kind people in your life as well, and investing in those things. And also just like I think something which is kind of a cultural thing at Princeton that I've seen so far, is at least, is there's a really massive focus on mentorship and the whole idea of like Princeton in the service of the nation and humanity is really something that you see being part of everyone's lives on a daily basis, whether it means like the pace center and all the organizations that run under that, or whether it means all the work that the undergraduate student government undertakes for things like mental health, things like reproductive health, for students across campus, or whether it means you know um, something as simple as like how much of a focus there is on student leaders, from residential college assistants to orientation leaders. So I think that being surrounded by that kind of like a cultural thing has also been something really important to that growth for me personally. Because I think seeing so many people around you so consistently invested in those around them pushes you to work in that direction as well. So yeah.
And Isha, honestly, I want to share with everyone. Isha has been a JPIS student right from the beginning. And I think she probably entered the Hogwarts Castle building and made it her own space. Everyone would probably think that she really did possess a time turner for all the activities that she managed to put in the 24-hour span of a day. So truly, Isha, like while everybody knew you as the girl who managed it all, as the girl who achieved it all, came, I think, 13th or 14th December, and of the application year, and you weren't very happy because how could Isha be deferred? How could Isha, sorry, get rejected? That rejection and Isha have never been in the same sentence before, ever in their life. So you must have learned a lot that day. You grew from that. A few months later, we had the world chasing Isha Agarwal. So whether it was Yale, Princeton, Carnegie Mellon, Berkeley, Columbia, like I think time will finish and the colleges won't. We had the world chasing you. So from that day to the day of all the acceptances, what were the learnings that you took away that you can give, pass on to your juniors who might, of course, also experience a similar situation?
Um, so my Stanford rejection was 5:30 a.m. on the 8th of December 2018. I still remember it really clearly because it was a real turning point for me, not just in the application process, but in terms of just like my growth as a person. I think in terms of the application process, I think it, led me towards like a reevaluation of my common application as a whole. Ma'am and sir worked extensively with me, and we changed my common application essay, and just really focused on ensuring that every single one of my applications was a good depiction of me as a human being and academically extracurricular wise. um and I think it really pushed me to really give it my best in those last like 10-15 days after TEDx. And so that definitely, like, I think the biggest impact that it had on me was just like pushing me to really work hard, because I was really scared that I wouldn't end up going to college in the fall. Um but I feel like also personally, before that rejection, I think I would always only take a chance where I knew I could win. I would only partake in something if I knew that, I would be successful in terms of the result. Like, I'd come out on top. And I think that was a dangerous mindset that kept me from taking risks, and that kept me from a lot of opportunities, and that could have kept me from a lot of opportunities over the last 2 years had that mindset not changed. So as devastating as it was in that moment, I'm grateful for it, because over the last like 2.5 years, it's really pushed me to put myself out there in, ways and in positions that I wouldn't have before. And I think especially for women, that's something that's really important, because, I think Reshma Saujani spoke about it in her TED talk, wherein if you looked at the same position across multiple fields, men would be willing to apply for it if they qualified only 60% of the criteria for the job. But women typically wouldn't go for it until unless they were like 100% there, which um, so getting out of that mindset of like perfectionism and like really working towards taking chances as much as I could was something that was important and something I'm grateful for.
Absolutely, and I think that we all saw you stick to what you believed in, stick to the your pursuits, your passion. You channeled it in your application, in your essays. You channeled it in the T-shirts you wore, which depicted all your love for astrophysics and politics as much with future is female, and that's what I think shown at the end. So that's really kudos to you, Isha. Coming to you, Ronit, want to talk to you a little bit because I think your application was quite different from the other Tigers out here, the other Princeton Tigers. So you were a lot more streamlined and focused in your activity list, a lot more. Like you knew what you wanted and you stuck to that. So whether it was actually the strings of the guitar or your mathematical equations, you knew where your priorities lay, and you just made all of these aspects dance to your tunes, right? You didn't join the entire how everybody in school feels there's a certain right way of having an activity list, there's a certain right way of the applications. But here was Ronit, world topper, with his own happy smile, perennially going around helping others on his birthday, even though he had his acceptance letter. So you were very true to yourself and who you were. You stuck to that. Like, I would love to hear you speak about that, and how do you feel embracing that and embracing your own individuality helped you in the whole application process?
So I basically think there is no one perfect trick to craft the flawless application. So I think I spent about 2 years in ninth and tenth experimenting, kind of working on myself using the trial and error method, trying my hand at a lot of different things. And maybe at the end of 10th grade, at the end of the 2 years, I kind of figured out what I really wanted to do and kind of focused all my energy towards that. So also this might not work for everybody. So my advice here would be to kind of take some time to experiment, to figure out what you really want to do and stick with that, and not not falter in your way. I think that's very important, not just in the college application process, but in your for your whole life. I feel.
And I think that became a fabulous application essay as well, right? So when we take a risk, it really pays off, because I remember we did speak about how you went against the norm and pursued studying your own way after being bullied in your previous school. And so that when you take a risk, it really does pay off. Um, that's great, Ronit. Thank you so much for that. Sartha, coming to you briefly for a second, because here we have Ronit talking about sticking to yourself and your individuality, and you have a very similar story as much, because you faced vitiligo, you battled it head on, and you were always that student with his hood up, walking around, talking about veganism, trying to make the canteen vegan, much to everybody else's dislike, and you stuck to that with your 100 days of running and all of this. So why don't you talk about how, when you were pursuing all of this, was it just out of passion? Were you doing it because you wanted to have a fun essay to write about in your college application? What was the thought?
Okay, so one important thing that I'll start with is that I was really trying to be like my brother initially. Actually, all throughout middle school, I was trying to be like him. He's right here, Aryan. And it was in my mind that I wanted to be a tiger, so I thought that I needed to be like him. And that was my thought process for the longest time. But over time, through ninth and 10th grade, I realized that it wasn't just about being like him or becoming better than him. It was simply about being my own person. And when I realized that my own limitations, my difficulties like vitiligo, and my own passions, like I was an environmentalist, I was a vegan, and the things that made me my own person were the things that really mattered. That's what truly drove me. That I want to become as unique and as individualistic as possible. And I guess I didn't really care after a point whether all my friends hated me for introducing vegan food in the mess and the canteen. And whenever I gave them lectures on why you shouldn't eat meat or you should not have cheese, they got furious. But I really didn't care, because I just cared about being who I was to the best of my capacity. And I guess that's what drove me to do whatever I ended up doing throughout high school. Yeah.
So you didn't care if everyone got to know that it was Sarthak who moved away their cheese from the school canteen, clearly, right? But Sarthak, I also want to ask you, because you spoke about wanting to emulate Aryan. Right now, I don't know if we ever really talked about this, but I do think that there was dejection on your face the day the head boy results were announced, because, of course, you were
Mhm.
trying to emulate Aryan. Of course, you wanted to become head boy, and why should you not, right? So there was that. Then Google Coding wasn't a success first time round. So you faced failure multiple times, but you rose from it. You still made everything happen what you wanted, whether it was the Harvard Sustainability Grant, whether it was overcoming those coding problems, obstacles, and actually going on to win Google Coding, whether it was becoming the Lord of 11 A stars, right? So you still made
Mhm.
whatever you want to happen. And I think that as high school students, failure is something that everybody does deal with, whether it's in a lot of activities, whether it's in college applications, whether it's in leadership positions. So, what advice do you have to your juniors? how should they face their failure? How should they view it? How should they overcome the obstacles that come their way?
Okay, I haven't really thought about it that much, but now that you've given me this question, I realize that I'm sort of the perfect person for this question because I have faced a lot of failure. When it came to the 11 A stars, the SAT, Google coding, veganism, table tennis, everything I failed initially. And I don't really know if I can give one specific answer for what made me continue and how I ended up actually succeeding in all of those areas. But if there was one piece of advice I could give, it's that if you keep trying and if you keep repeating and if you keep working towards what you want to do, then it's really okay to fail because I read this quote somewhere. I know everyone has probably already heard it, but the master has already failed more times than the beginner has even tried. So if you really want to succeed at something, you genuinely can't be afraid of failure. You need to learn to embrace failure. Why did I not crack Google coding? Why did I not get that perfect SAT score? And why could I not succeed in doing something at first? And when you're able to identify those weaknesses and you're willing to work on them, then you can definitely succeed at whatever it is that you want to.
Thank you. I think that's going to really help a lot of students because often we hear as counselors that, but what if I don't end up finding success in this? Would it still be great? Would it still be viewed well? And as you can see, all of them here have spoken about it. All of them have spoken about facing failure, going through activities that didn't yield in the perfect result, but actually learning from that. And that turned out to be something that they're eternally grateful for. Right. So I don't want to take up, I can keep talking to you all as we do, but I know that Aryan and Siddhant here are dying to ask you some questions as well. So over to you both now.
Thank you so much, Miss. And I again want to congratulate all of you for attending Princeton, which is one of the most fabulous institutions in the world. And we actually just had a few questions regarding your college application process. In particular, we wanted to know if you could guide us through your journey through high school to your prime time in 11th and 12th. And now in the process, tell us about your two main academic feats or extracurricular activities and two experiences that gave you learnings that no book could ever give you. I think we can start with Aryan.
Yeah, so just to repeat the question, Rakachu. So summarizing 11th and 12th grade experiences and top two extracurriculars, top two classes as well. Did you mention? Okay, awesome. Um, my 11th and 12th experience was a lot of trying to juggle things that I was completely new to. I think after the ma'am touched a bit about this, trying to like getting myself onboarded onto student government, and also I was also part of student gaf. uh, Trying to balance all of those things was new for me. And 11th and 12th was also a lot about SAT and ACT. So I feel like that's what took over a lot of my time. I think something that I would recommend to people is to try to take SAT and ACT as early as possible. Another thing I'd probably like recommend when you're thinking about extracurriculars is you shouldn't think about it as like something that's binary, like either 11th or 12th. Like you finish extracurriculars in 11th, then you like focus on your own common app. If you really like something, you should keep doing it from 11th to 12th, and you should keep giving the college updates and everything that you've made progress towards. Um, and I think so. Speaking a bit about top two academics and top two extracurriculars, I think one thing that really like was valuable for me was just being part of Turing Gaf and leading Turing Fraternity. It was a computer science club that we have, hopefully still active. I think I learned a lot from it just because I had the chance to lead a bunch of people, and I had the chance to like work with people in my grade and grades below. I think something that you can't really learn as well in high school and college is leadership, and because you can't really like learn leadership, you have to keep practicing it, and practicing it is difficult because only like one person gets to be the leader in one organization, so you have to be one of the lucky few. So I'd say like any chance that you can get at leadership in high school is something that you should like strive towards, even if you're not really getting the recognition from it. And academics, I feel like my English classes helped me a lot because college you will end up writing papers like no doubt you will write a lot of papers. So if you're really focusing a lot on your Latin language classes, I think like any chance that you get to write as much as you can and get that vetted by English teachers is super important. No one really talks about it, but like writing is a skill that's like been timeless, I think, and it like only accumulates. You can only become better at writing. You can't really like become worse at it. So you should keep practicing it as much as possible from a young age. And I will stop talking now so you can ask other people questions.
That's actually great because I agree with you completely that writing is an essential skill and we require it for most of our life. We can now move on to Sarthak. Sarthak, could you give us a bit of insight about your your application experience and the two main extracurricular activities that stood you out from the other applicants to Princeton?
Okay, so my high school experience, the things that stood out the most was every team activity that I did. I was a part of Turing F. I was a part of an organization called Spark. I actually started that myself, and I was a part of creating our school's mascot. That's actually one of the most important extracurriculars that I have. We created the first ever female high school mascot in India, and it was sort of a very big deal because we were trying to work towards school spirit and bringing people together, creating house mascots, uplifting house spirit. And I got seriously into teamwork after a certain point, and everything that I did, it was towards keeping people more spirited towards their organizations, their houses, their clubs, and a sort of connection and loyalty. If you guys remember from the most recent sports day that we had a different level of energy that we've never seen in our school before, because we had house mascots, house chants, and everything was completely different just because of that sense of school spirit. And another extracurricular that was very important was probably the environmentalism aspect of my application that probably stood out. I won this thing called the Harvard Sustainability Grant, that you receive funding from Harvard University if you show a great sense of drive and enthusiasm towards environmentalism, and you work towards it, and you can present them with future ideas that you are willing to work towards. That's how I got that. And when it comes to academics, there's just one, and that's the 11 A stars. Um, there was this very weird mindset in my head that there is one topper every year, there is one head boy every year, and there will be some person speaking on the stage every year, but there was no one ever in our school who even attempted 11 subjects. So I just wanted to do that more than anything else. I wanted to have 11 A stars, and I succeeded. So I guess that was a big deal. And yeah, I think that
Sarthak,
was
look at the
important.
trend you've started. We have 25 students this year who have taken 11 A star, 11
Yes, ma'am.
subjects.
I heard in my sister's batch there are a lot of students attempting that. So yeah, I think that's all I have.
That's certainly quite amazing because I know that for a fact that attempting 11 subjects in the IGCSEs is no joke, right? And congratulations on your 11 A stars again. I think we can move on to Isha. Isha, what were the two things that really stood out about you in your application that you think helped you get into Princeton?
I mean, thank you for that question. I don't know if I can answer for sure as to what those two things were, but I can talk about which extracurriculars meant the most to me. And I think that's what the focus should be always, because as long as you're pursuing an extracurricular that I think, as Sarthak spoke about, as Ronit spoke about, as Aryan spoke about, as long as you're like driven to do it, that's the most important reason. And that'll come through on your application. I think something that was definitely very valuable was I had the opportunity to be part of the Yale summer program in astrophysics between my junior and senior years of high school over the summer. And that was definitely a very valuable experience. There was only, I think it was 32 students from across the world. And it was a very intense research project. I mean, not an intense research project by college standards, but an intense research project by high school standards, um, wherein, we modeled the orbit and physical characteristics of a near Earth asteroid. And it was valuable because it really simulated the college environment in terms of its intensity, in terms of, the kind of people you get to be surrounded by, in terms of the workload, in terms of just the passion of everyone else around you, and how, like, so if you look at the Dear Princeton Class of 2025 video, the narrator talks about how when you come to Princeton, there everyone you're going to meet is crazy about something, and that is something that you saw at YSPA as well. So YSPA, definitely. Over the same summer, I was also interning with Neuroequilibrium, which is this vertigo startup. And that was something really valuable because I got to work on like an independent project, which was quite meaningful to me in terms of the social impact that it could possibly have, but also like was technically complex and involved a lot of independent work, which is something that was really valuable and to be able to talk about during interviews as well. Um, and then apart from that, I was um, licensee for TEDx, and it was an honor serving as like head girl. And I was involved in a lot of public speaking, student government like activities, and simultaneously a lot of like STEM aligned activities. So I was more like all over the place as compared to, people with more of a spike. But that's okay because I was passionate about the things I was doing. Um, and then definitely, like Aryan said earlier, writing is something like writing for IB is something that was a very valuable skill, and that like still is extremely useful to me right now. Doing your extended essay, your IAs, it seems like such a pain, but going through that experience prepares you for papers at the university level in a way that nothing else could. um so in addition, and of course, like maintaining a heavy focus on academics. I did not take 11 subjects, I took 10. But yeah, just those things, just as long as you're pursuing things you're interested in, I think, and giving them your best, that comes through on your application. Also, I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to drop off the call in about 2 minutes. Yeah.
So, Ishadi,
That
before you go, like since you touched upon your love for astrophysics, like
Mhm.
as much as I am aware, you were very confused between choosing computer science and astrophysics, and one can understand how tough it can be to find specific parameters to differentiate between two subjects that you're very passionate about. So,
Mhm.
how did you actually go about that, and short decided that this is the field I will be focusing on? And
Yeah, for sure. I can answer that. That's been a very integral question to the last couple of years of my life. But definitely, I wouldn't recommend trying to make that decision in high school. If you're interested in a couple of things, pursue them as far as you can. And with IB, with IGCSE, you have choices. You have the option to make choices you wouldn't in CBSE or ICSE, where you can pursue a breadth of subjects. So definitely do that. I cared as much about my computer science IA as about like my extended essay in physics and astrophysics. And so definitely, like, do that. Pursue as many extracurriculars in the different fields as you can. And I don't think you have to force yourself to make a decision on the front of that specialization in like 11th or 12th grade. I said earlier, my application was this discordant mess of debate and student government, and also astrophysics, and also like computer science, and also I was also interested in model UN, and also, so you know what I mean. And I feel like that's okay as long as you flesh out those activities as much as you can, put in your best. And yeah, I made the decision over the last 2 years after taking a decent number of classes in both subjects, and then deciding based on the subject but also the career trajectories that each subject would prepare me towards. Just for context, I am concentrating in computer science. I just take astro classes as much as I can.
Isha, what you are calling a discordant mess, some may call abstract art, right?
Definitely. And I think that the other end of the spectrum is Ronit, right, who had a very focused application like Akriti ma'am mentioned before. So Ronit, could you tell us a little bit about your application as well and the extracurriculars you participated in during your high school years and your whole high school experience overall?
So, like I said before, my application was pretty much mostly academically inclined. But one activity which meant a lot to me was that I played the sitar. So, which was not, which did not go, which was not a, I mean, not academic inclined, obviously. So, when I played sitar, I was a completely different person. I was a person who worked very hard, who sat with his sitar for hours on end to practice, and a guy who persevered for days to perfect a rag or a tune. So I think it's really important, even if your application is streamlined, it's important to explore other activities. So, and maybe you might find completely different aspects of yourself which might not be present in your basic focus. I think that's really important. Uh, Another important kind of extracurricular was a research paper that I wrote under a professor from Davidson College. So that was a completely different experience for me because I wrote a research paper in maths, and I didn't perform any experiments. I didn't do any practical research in a manner of speaking. What I mostly did was theoretical research, which was just on paper. And that was really exciting, but it was a completely different experience for me, and which was basically what I wanted to do in the future, which kind of paved my career path for me. So on the other end of the spectrum, you also want to kind of discover what you're going to do in the future. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here to ask another question to Ronit. Ronit, you're talking about different experiences in terms of writing the research paper, but that was academic writing, right? And then we had your love for mathematics and physics, and you know how all of that comes naturally to you. But did the reflective essay writing process, was that daunting? Was that natural? If it was daunting, how did you take it on? What was your experience with the whole essay writing process?
So essay writing was kind of pretty challenging for me because I'm kind of more inclined towards the more logical aspects of math and physics, and I did not really do this sort of reflective essay writing before, so it was pretty challenging for me. But basically, how I deal with it, I just wrote uh, something on my Word document and took it to other people for feedback, and also I kind of figured out what I was doing wrong and kind of worked on those parts. And after a month or two, everything just became natural. I think it was that process of persevering and writing essays regularly and getting your feedback and working on your mistakes that I think really helped me craft a good essay.
Absolutely. So, key takeaway being perseverance. Thank you for bringing that up.
So, Ronit Bhaiya, I had a question. Like, every time we would look at you, we would look up to you as the person with one of the most phenomenal academic feats in JPI's history. And many a times it wasn't just like your name wouldn't be attached with a lot of extracurricular activities when we talked about sports or when we talked about any uh, activities that are considered to be aside academic the academic part of our application. So didn't that ever scare you in terms of the fact that us universities have a holistic approach to the us college applications that they receive, and seeing that you're very much inclined towards your academics, um, you would have a less of a competitive edge over other people who, along with having a strong academic personality, have an athletic figure with them. if you could get
I
the gist.
yeah, I think I get the question. So I was definitely very scared about the whole holistic process because I was not very athletically inclined towards athletics. So, but I found comfort in the fact that it's not like I didn't try my hand at playing sports, maybe whether it's football or table tennis or basketball. So I did try my hand at those things, but I was not very good at it. So I didn't really see that as much of a problem. So to kind of compensate for that, I looked at everything that I was good at and gave my absolute best. I devoted all my resources towards that, to kind of stand out in those areas to kind of make up for my lack of uh, other activities.
Yeah, certainly, because I used to always have this thought in my mind that if I am just putting my focus into one part, the other part wouldn't be cherished as much, and that would have a negative impact. But your like optimistic approach is certainly a very inspirational part. Siddhant, would you like to carry on with the questions?
Yeah. So this question is actually directed towards Sarthak. We hear you made to write. You've written multiple drafts and you had to perfect all your essays multiple times, right? So could you just give us a bit of insight about the counseling process at JPS and how important the time in the hostel was for you? Because I'm aware that you spent, I think, 45 days, 30 to 45 days in the hostel with a couple of your friends, just perfecting your essays, right? So could you just highlight, your experience there?
Right. So I guess I was a little different than most people when it came to the essay writing portion because throughout high school from 9 to 12, I think that writing the college essays was my favorite part because I genuinely used to love doing it. I personally believe that everything that you did over the course of your 17 years before your application, it all boils down to that one PDF, and you're writing your essay and you realize that, oh my God, I did all of this, and this is finally the moment it can actually pay off. And it's overwhelming, but it was also really beautiful to write the Common App. I really like doing it. And when it came to counseling, definitely it was um, a very, very, very big role that Ayusha and Akriti ma'am played in my essay. I read the first draft of my Common App and it is terrible. Uh, I was definitely not getting into Princeton with that Common App essay. And when you're working on it, I think around draft 9 or 10, I told them that I think this is perfect now. And when Ayuso read draft 10, he said that you need to change this completely. This is not good. And I got so disheartened that how can you say that? I wrote 10 drafts. And then that was the moment when Ayuso popped open this picture of Apple products and how they did in the market. The last, I think, 2030 Apple products. And he showed us that the first 8 or 9 iPods that Steve Jobs released were all failures. And then the 10th or 11th iPod that he released was actually a success. And he actually did that in front of us. We thought that that's so cool. How did he just think of that image? And I mean, yeah, we have those moments with Sir and Ma'am. And the hostel experience was definitely, we got very lucky, sort of made the best out of the COVID situation. We lived in the hostel for 2 months and worked on our essays. We had counseling every day. Sir and ma'am read each one of my essays. They gave me feedback on everything. And so used to give me deadlines. This needs to be done by 3 a.m. And he was up at 3 a.m. when I was finishing up my essay. And he told me, yes, you finished it 15 minutes before the deadline. So the level of commitment that we get from Ayusar and Akrityam is really unparalleled that you'll find anywhere else. So that definitely played a very big role in my application.
Thank you, Sarthak. Level of commitment you get from us or the level of torture that is inflicted on you?
Ma'am, it seems like torture at first, but when it pays off, ultimately, it's very rewarding.
That's a beautiful story that certainly encourages us also. Ki hopefully we'll have the similar kind of experience because we're quarantined at home right now. And This next question is for you, Ronit Bhaiya. So, if you could talk to yourself when you were starting out with your college application process in ninth grade, 10th grade, is there any specific advice who you would like to give yourself? And if anything, what would you aim to do differently?
So I guess the ninth grade Donut was a very shy and timid person. I would definitely tell him to not worry about things so much and go out there and do stuff without hesitating, because I think by the end of 10th or 11th grade I learned that, and it felt so much better to not be worried about stuff and kind of going there in spite of knowing that I definitely will fail at something like athletics, and going out and trying my hand at it. So that was a pretty great experience. So that's something I would definitely tell the 9 years on it, and all of you who are starting your high school journey right around now. Uh, I think I would also say that to not be afraid of failures. So even if you fail, you'll, at the risk of being very cliched, you learn a lot from your failures. So not only from the fact that you can obviously look back at the mistakes you made, but also in the fact that failures motivate you a lot. After a failure, you might feel that you're at the kind of rock bottom of your life, but definitely remember that even after a week or so, you won't even remember your failure, and you'll be a much better version of yourself.
That's inspiring. So, Sarthak, Bhaiya, do you have any similar views regarding this? If anything you would like to change from your journey starting in ninth or 10th grade?
Hmm. I mean, technically, the answer should be change nothing because it worked out. But I mean, there's always scope for improvement in any process. So the one most important thing that I tell myself is don't seek a perfect application, because people worry about, oh, am I only into academics? Have I done this? Have I checked all the boxes? Do I have a research? Do I have an internship? Do I have a summer school? Did I do MUNs? It doesn't matter. I'll give you my example. I've never done an MUN in my entire life, and my entire batch was doing it, but I just didn't do it because I didn't want to. I wasn't really into debating and stuff like that. And this advice is very important, that as long as you are absolutely in love with what you're doing, if it's just computer science, if it's just writing, if it's just dancing, it's perfectly okay. It doesn't matter that you want to create a perfect, well-rounded application that I should be good at everything. You don't have to be. You just have to be really, really good at what you really want to do, and you need to be excellent at what you love. And if you do what you love, you'll automatically get excellent at it because you will give your heart to it and you will give more effort. So I did ended up doing that, but for a long time I was trying to, have a bite of everything. I was trying to do everything that I could. And that's not necessary. If you want to do it, you can, but don't do it under peer pressure just because your friends are doing it, or just because you think that it'll be good for college. Just do what you love doing. And when it comes to essay writing, you will realize that it all sort of accumulates into a beautiful story that, yeah, you can reflect upon later, but just do what your heart is telling to when it comes to the beginning of high school.
It's very inspirational to see how you always seem to take the unique route and it just works out for you, because most of us are scared of that one failure that we might get. So, Siddhant.
Absolutely. And Aryan, I think Sarthak highlighted a beautiful point, because if we look at all the panelists we had on this session, if we look at the Princeton pack, they've all had very diverse applications. They've all had very diverse interests and passions and extracurriculars, right? So there's no one way of, okay, let me analyze and I'll find the formula which is going to make me get into Princeton. That's not how it works. It's about being yourself, being individualistic, and following your passion. And then, if it's the right fit for you, you'll make it there.
Mhm.
I completely agree, Miss, and that's really important during the college application process as well. Also, just a question I had for you, Sarthak, was how did you find your that one passion? Because I know there are a lot of high school students that would be watching this are struggling to find the one thing that they're really passionate at, right? So what made you find your passion, and how did you realize that was your passion?
I guess that there's a simple trick to it. It's just called trial and error. You have a lot of time when you're younger. In ninth grade, there's absolutely no pressure on you. I mean, you think that, yeah, you have to study and you always need to keep that part of your life sorted. Like, I should be decent at academics and the subjects that I want to pursue. But when you try everything, like I tried 11 subjects, right? When I was in the ninth grade, I only had 10 subjects. But when I came into the 10th grade, I sort of had this feeling that I should try out biology. I didn't know if I was passionate for it. I had no idea what my passion was. I just wanted to try it. So I tried as many things as I could, and nobody is stopping you from doing that. Try computer science, try physics, try dancing, try math, try English, try writing, and whatever, doing whichever thing out of all of these fields makes you the happiest. If you want to do it more, you don't feel like it's a pressure to invest time into that. Like, I never felt pressure when I gave time to computer science. I always loved doing it. And as I realized later, I love doing biology just as much, if not more. So I dropped computer science in 11th grade and I took up biology, chemistry, and physics. So you never know where you're going to go. I didn't take computer science, even though it's my primary subject as per my application, but it doesn't really matter. I know it seems like I can't take such a big risk, but risks are what get you into these places. If you don't take risks, it's never going to happen. So stop following the path you think you're meant to follow. Okay, I'm just giving you quotes at this point, but yeah, just you will find your passion if you're not afraid of trying everything. Yeah, basically.
I think that's very beautifully put. How you can, like, reach out and risk everything to find your true passion. And I think Ronit actually just found his passion in mathematics at a very young age, right? So Ronit, could you shed a light about that as well? Because I myself am extremely interested in mathematics as well. So could you explain about how you found your passion in mathematics?
So you're right. I actually loved maths ever since ninth, even before ninth grade. So for me, there was sort of elegance and beauty in solving mathematical problems that just spoke out to me. And even though it is beneficial to kind of identify a passion earlier in the process, but it's completely fine even if you don't know what you want to do, even at the end of high school. For example, I tried taking a philosophy class after coming to Princeton. It was I loved philosophy, and maybe it's a very small chance, but maybe I might choose that as a career path, although it is far-fetched. But so the main point here is, don't be kind of stuck up about finding your own thing. It does, it's a process and it does take time. You just have to try your hands at different things to kind of find out what really speaks out to you.
Oh, it's really awesome to see how both of your approaches have been um, essentially similar but way different at the same time,
Mhm.
and this is very inspiring. So, just to put a twist into the this meeting, let's talk about any of the fun traditions or any of the quirky activities any opportunities that you see in Princeton. And you can just start off by telling your favorite tradition and go on to tell what factors compelled you towards Princeton rather than any of the other universities that you had as options. Sarthak, Bhaiya, you can start.
Okay, so the factor that propelled me the most towards Princeton was academic prowess. Uh, um, especially for the field that I wanted to do, I eventually identified that I'll do something related to computer science, physics, math, or economics. I mean, it's still pretty broad. I haven't decided. But yeah, Princeton was really good at all of this, and I love all of this. So that was a big reason I chose Princeton. And I don't know if I have one favorite tradition. I'm a big fan of the big bonfire that they have. Whenever they beat Harvard and Yale, I think, if they beat both of the schools, because they were like the big three. So if they beat both of the schools in the football game that year, there is this massive bonfire in the middle of campus, and everyone gathers around and they sort of just have a nice time celebrating. And another tradition that I think is sort of unofficial is screaming before finals. I am really looking forward to that. You, before your first final, you just get onto the street, everyone, and you scream your lungs out for 60 seconds at 12 a.m. And wherever each person is, if you're in your dorm, if you're at a bench, if you're in a park, you just start screaming, and the entire campus is screaming. It sounds cool in my head, so let's see what that will be like. That's just a fun tradition I'm looking forward to.
So for me, Princeton was a pretty clear choice because I was always academically inclined, and like Sarthak said, Princeton is one of the most academically rigorous university there is. Also, my seniors who were pretty much my mentors were Isha and Aryan, and all of them were at Princeton, and that was one of the biggest things that kind of pushed me towards Princeton. uh, so one of the tradition that I think one of the best tradition that I like at Princeton is that you're supposed to only enter the Fitz Randolph gate only once when you enter the university, when you first come to the university, and you're not supposed to go through that gate until you graduate. So you're basically part of that of the university. You're one with the university for the complete 4 years, and the great thing about that is even after you graduate and leave through the fifth Randolph gate, you're still part of the orange bubble to the alumni network of Princeton. And in a sense, you're always a part of Princeton throughout your life. I think that's really beautiful.
So, Ronit Bhaiya, I think Sarthak Bhaiya won't be able to answer this as with a lot of experience. But how surreal does it feel that every single year for like 5 or 6 years perpetually, there is a JPI student each and every year coming into Princeton with high hopes for their academic prowess. So, how surreal does that feel? And if any other thoughts regarding that you have?
I mean, it's definitely very rare. I haven't seen any school in the country that has like that Princeton has taken 4 5 students from consecutively every year. So it's definitely pretty surreal. So I mean, it feels like at JPIS, if you kind of apply it to Princeton, you have sort of an edge, even though that might not be real. It kind of gives you a confidence. It really gives you a confidence boost, right? So I think that's one point. And since Princeton takes is has been taking a student from GKS every year, you always have some alumni from JPS who's at Princeton who can guide you through the whole process, through the whole application process, through the process of getting into Princeton. I mean, there's like I think all the people from Jaipur at Princeton who are mostly from JPIS kind of have a sort of group where they meet a few times for coffee and stuff and discuss everything there about Princeton and all. So I obviously this really helped me a lot because I think Isha and Aryan really helped me through the application process, throughout the application process, and I think that's really great about GPI.
That's great to hear. And I completely agree that JPS is a phenomenal institution, right? And to conclude this interview, we just want to thank you so much for taking an hour out of your day to come here and just answer a few of our questions about the college application process and about Princeton. Just a quick reminder to click the link in our description box below to donate to our COVID-19 crowdfunding campaign in association with Give India, Uplift, and Ujala Foundation. We've already raised a very large amount, and we hope to raise a lot more to help those in need below the poverty line. Once again, thank you so much, Ronit and Sarthak, for taking time, and Isha and Aryan for taking time out of your day and coming here to enlighten us all about your admissions process. Thank you so much.